Welcome to the Author's Den, a place where we encourage reading and writing, a place where you can meet authors and book illustrators, a place to get your questions answered about writing, publishing, and promoting your book. Hello and welcome to the Author's Den. I'm your host, Mike Talley, and with me today is my guest, Jahquan Hawkins, author of Finding My Way. Jahquan, I'm glad you could be with us today. Tell me a little bit about yourself, your background and your training.
Well, I'm a native Detroiter. I'm a DPS kid. I actually just celebrated my 20-year anniversary, graduating from Detroit King on East Lafayette. Very proud of that. Proud to represent Detroit Public Schools because I'm a product of the system, and there's a lot of negativity that's said about the system within Detroit. Everyone has an opinion nationwide on what the system is or what it isn't, but I can proudly tell you that I've been able to gain quite a bit from being a student within the DPS system. I actually went to school on the east side but grew up on the west side of Detroit. But as I mentioned in the book, my parents saw value in education, and they didn't want me to attend my neighborhood schools, which weren't that great. And they also wanted me to have an immersion experience outside of my immediate surroundings. And so they put me on 2 buses and sent me over to King, where I learned a great deal about the importance of education from the standpoint of having individuals around you that see the value in the educational system itself. We had students that were studying abroad. We had students that were in National Honor Society, students that were participating in Saturday enrichment programs. And that to me said that these individuals saw that there was something to be gained from the educational experience above and beyond just going to class, doing the bare minimum to get by. It was about investing in the educational process. And so that's what I did as an undergraduate student at Wayne State. Once I figured out why I was there. In terms of my undergraduate education, my mom wanted a doctor in her family. She's got 3 boys, and she wanted to have one of us go on to be a doctor. And so I was the designated hitter. And unfortunately, I majored in bio when I had no interest whatsoever in being a physician whatsoever. I had no idea what the training entailed. And quite frankly, I had no interest in medicine whatsoever.
Jahquan, one of the things you talk about in your book is mentoring and tutors. Is that something that you took advantage of, and can you talk about the value of that?
Eventually, I found the interest, or I found the value in taking advantage of tutors and mentors. But unfortunately, in the beginning, as a first-generation college student, I didn't know what I didn't know. And part of what I didn't know was the value of actually asking other people for help. And so it wasn't until I was on academic probation and extremely humbled by the college environment that I actually started to reach out to mentors. I had an individual by the name of Donnie Elston, who I talk about in the book, and I met Donnie during my freshman year in college. He hired me in as a student worker, and he's a recruiter. He's been a recruiter in higher education for several years, and he saw something in me above and beyond what I saw in myself. He saw potential for greatness. He would tell me all the time that he expects me to go on and get my degree, to get advanced degrees, to be, of course, an upstanding citizen in society and what have you. But he taught me the value of work ethic. Donnie entrusted me with a lot. As a student assistant working in his department, I worked a lot with tours on campus, interacting with college freshmen that were coming into the university environment. He truly inspired me to want to work in higher education.
Sometimes a person will take classes or take a course of study that they think they should take. It might not be what they're actually good at or even interested in. What's your feeling about this? Should a student take classes that they know they're excited about, or should they take something that they know they can be successful at?
Well, I think it's important that whatever you do, you have a certain level of passion for it, but you have to also understand that this is what you're going to be doing not only to sustain yourself, but your family later on in life. And so as you're thinking about career opportunities, as you're thinking about career pathways, you have to think about the viability of that career, not just today, but in 4 to 6 years when you actually graduate with your credential. Is this a career that's going to yield job opportunities? Is there growth in this particular area? And how viable is this particular service or career opportunity for the society that is deemed to serve or responsible for serving. And so ultimately I ask that students do some type of career exploration and self-exploration, because if you don't know who you are, then you don't know what value you have to the world around you. And so I think it's important to think about that early and often, because what you like as a 16-year-old may change as a 21-year-old. But you're not going to be graduating at 16, you're graduating at 21, 22. So you have to kind of think ahead a little bit as well.
Tell us why you wrote the book. What inspired you? Is it from firsthand experience?
Well, finding my way for me was about empowering the next generation of college students. I took both my frustrations as a first generation college student and now the frustration that I see in the students that I serve as a higher education professional. And I wanted to kind of merge that into an easily digestible guide that students can use, they can tap into if they run into a stopgap of some sort, if they run into some type of pitfall. I don't want the next generation of college students to take 8 years to finish their undergraduate degree as I did. I think that's, of course, that's way too long to be an undergraduate, because the more time that you spend in undergrad, the more money that you're spending, and the more sweat equity you're putting into something that doesn't necessarily yield the result that you're looking for. And so what I want people to do is be efficient about the process of gaining the educational credential.
Students are going to be confronted with many opportunities, and we know it's going to be confusing. Talk a little bit about that, and also talk about the idea that students should go to school with the idea that they're going to complete their education.
Yeah, I mean, thinking of the end result in the process of initiating that journey is very important, because I think we have to be visionary when it comes to what we see ourselves doing in the future. And it's not just the vision of someone else, but as I mentioned before, the vision that you have for your own life. And with that being said, you get out of the experience what you put into it. What I find in working in higher education is that the students who actually are involved on campus, the students that are engaged with the campus environment, tend to be the students that also learn about scholarship opportunities, learn about student organizations. I was an advisor for Phi Theta Kappa, for example, our honor society at OCC, and it's the honor society for all two-year colleges. And that organization offers over $40,000 in scholarships, $40 million in scholarships every year. So think about that. Think about how much opportunity that is, not only for a student to achieve an associate's degree, but a bachelor's degree and beyond. And so it's the students, though, that ask the right questions, that get involved, that utilize the campus resources, that learn what's available to them to the fullest extent. And they take full advantage of it, and they should.
Your chapter names in the book were very interesting. Talk about those. How did they come about?
Well, the one that I really enjoyed in terms of the way that it was worded was how strong is your squad? And I thought automatically, I'm a big sports fan. I thought about, a basketball team and what makes up a good basketball team. And I think important in that process is understand what your role is and the role of the individuals around you. And so even though, for example, I had parents that didn't attend college, they still had a role in my educational achievement, because A, they set the foundation for me by sending me to private school as a young student, in putting me in a school environment where students were serious about their education, and ultimately allowing me to have enrichment experiences along the way that help prepare me for college, at least from a social standpoint, because it's not always about the academics. Oftentimes it's about the social aspect as well. I met my wife in college. I met my best friend, who was the godfather of my children, in college. I met the person who gave me my first job out of college in college. And so, these are all people that, of course, play a major role in my success to this day. And I met them all when I was 17, 18, 19 years old. And so they all played a very integral part in my educational journey, but also my personal journey, moving from boyhood to manhood. And so I think how strong is your squad is probably my favorite chapter, because it's not just about the individual, it's about the network or the village around that individual that helps prepare them for success.
I know that you make it a point to give back. You mentioned that in your book too, the idea of giving back. You've done that with Man Up and Exposure U. Talk about the value of that.
Well, Exposure U and Man Up are really about early immersion experiences, creating early immersion experiences for students who otherwise wouldn't be exposed to the higher education environment. The things that I wished someone had done for me when I was in the shoes of many of our students who are 12, 13 years old, still trying to figure out who they are first and foremost and what role they play in this larger society. And so what I enjoy about Man Up in particular is the fact that, A, we're dealing with all guys here. No knock on the ladies, but unfortunately, when you start talking about adolescent males, they're easily distracted, and so we pull them out of that environment. We put them in an environment where there are very influential but positive influential individuals in front of them. We're talking doctors, lawyers, professors, current college students, and we're all sharing our experiences with them in a very candid environment. We don't have to guard our words. We don't have to mince words at all. It's straight up. It's in your face. But it's all in the spirit. Everything that we say and everything that we do with that particular population of students is in the spirit of having them grow and develop from boys to men. Because eventually, mom isn't going to be there to make the decisions for you, to make the calls for you. Dad isn't going to be there to do the same. And so one of the things that I talk about also in the book is self-advocacy and the importance of learning how to do that. Once again, being the middle child of 3 boys, my mother was very protective of us. And so she didn't want us to scrape our knees. She didn't want us to stub our toes. And in the midst of that, some arrested development can take place. And so what we tell our students when it comes to the Man Up program and Exposure to You is that you're the COO, you're the CFO of your college experience. You take the reins of that experience and run with it.
At one point in the book, you make a point saying that you think parents can be overprotective and prevent students from experiencing the real world. Talk about that.
Absolutely. I was trying to say it in a diplomatic way because I am a parent of a 3-year-old now, and it hurts me to see my son crying or upset or whatever the case may be. So I definitely get it, but I think it's important that the students and the parents understand that, at the end of the day, it's the student's career that they're going to have to, work through for the remainder of their working years. It's the student's bill that they're going to be stuck with at the end of that educational experience, and it's the students' relationships that are going to be built and garnered during that 4 to 6 years that they're working on their undergraduate degree. And so you have to give them space and opportunity to make mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail. There's a statement that I heard a few years ago called failing forward, and I think that it's important that we allow students to stub their toe, to make mistakes, as long as they're learning from those mistakes and they're approaching that situation with a little bit more intel and savvy the next time that they encounter it.
There's so much we could talk about. One of the things that you do mention in the book is the idea that people are going to make mistakes and that we can learn from these mistakes. Can you talk about that?
I think one of the first mistakes and one of the largest mistakes that students make is not doing the self-exploration, not participating in the process of learning who they are and what value they have, what they do better than most people. I think that's what your gift is, and if you don't take the time out to explore yourself and find out what your gift is, then perhaps you're going to do not only yourself, but the world around you a disservice by not honing in on that.
When I was doing some homework on you and your book, I noticed that you have a lot of YouTube videos and you really have an internet presence. What's that been like for you?
It's been kind of scary. I think whenever you put yourself out there on the internet or you put yourself out there in print, writing a book, I explained it to someone that's saying it's like walking outside naked. Everyone is there to scrutinize you, your every word, what you're wearing, how you're saying certain things, and everyone becomes a resident expert or what we call an armchair quarterback at that point in time. And so sometimes you just have to do it anyway, regardless of the scrutiny, because you've got a greater purpose above and beyond trying to please people. You're really trying to move the needle as it pertains to student success. And so I do it in my own way. I try to make it resonate with the population that I'm looking to serve, which are millennials essentially, and then some returning students. But I want people to know that education doesn't necessarily have to be cookie cutter. It can be what you make it, because education is about an experience. It's not just about books. It's not just about lectures. It's not just about PowerPoints, but it's about an experience that you have with the environment around you and the things that you learn from that environment. And so whether that be YouTube, whether it be Instagram or Facebook or the book itself, I want students to know that learning can take place in all of those environments.
I know we've talked about a lot of aspects of your book. Are there any chapters that you would like to emphasize?
Let's see. Paying it forward, which is our last chapter. I think that there's a lot of learning that takes place, as we mentioned, outside the classroom. And I think once you've figured out college, once you feel as if you've kind of got your footing, it's important to reach back and look at someone who may be stumbling a little bit, someone who's on skates, and help them right the ship for themselves, because I think there's a lot of value in giving back to the environment that helped produce you. And I go back to Wayne State quite a bit. I go back to my old high school. We just adopted a student who's going to be going off to MSU in the class of 2016 at Martin Luther King High School. And I actually gifted her a copy of this book because I felt like it was important that if I believe in education, I believe that it changes lives, it's incumbent upon me to make sure that the next generation of college students has everything that they have possible to be prepared for that next step in their lives. And so I encourage current college students to go back to their high schools and do the same thing. You know, walk into the halls, sit in the classrooms, and tell the students quite candidly what they can expect when they walk through those doors. Is it easy? No. If it was, everyone would have a college degree. Are there going to be times when you want to give up? Absolutely. But I can remember my 9th grade year at Martin Luther King High School. One of my most memorable experiences was about 3 or 4 students that were currently in college. They were all King alum, came back and taught to us for about an hour about everything that they had experienced during their freshman year. And for me, that was one of the most valuable educational experiences that I had in any of my educational endeavors. I mean, it was so impactful to hear from folks who weren't far removed from the environment that I was currently in to say, you know what, it's difficult, but guess what, you can do it.
Jahquan, if someone wants to find out more about you, what can they do? Where can they go?
Well, I have an internet presence, as you mentioned. You can find me on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn as well. But the book itself is available via my website, which is www.jahquanhawkins.com. I know that my name is not the easiest to spell, so I'll break it down. It's JAHQUAN Hawkins, HAWKINS.com.
Is there anything that you'd like to add that we haven't talked about?
I guess I wanted to talk a little bit about within the book, I talk about being a boss about your education. And boss is actually used as an acronym within the book because I feel like everyone wants to be a boss. Everyone wants to be in control of their destiny. Everyone wants to be able to call their own shots. But not everyone is willing to do the things that are necessary in order to be in a position to be a boss. And so what I encourage students to do is become obsessed about their student success. And that's what BOSS stands for me. And in that process, it's important not just to be married to the results of the process, the results of the long nights, the results of the study sessions and getting that A or getting that credential or what have you, but be married to the process. Be married to the long nights, be married to the frustrations, be married to the failures, because they're all part of the learning process. And so that's what essentially prepares you, that's what qualifies you to become obsessed about your student success and truly be a boss.
Jahquan, thanks again for appearing on The Author's Den. And I'd like to encourage everybody in the audience to take advantage of Finding My Way by Jahquan Hawkins. Once again, my name is Mike Talley, and thanks for watching The Author's Den.